for this was Instagram, and it was the victim's Instagram. She was an avid social poster, and you knew where she was at and what she was doing based on her posts. So after reading years of kind of what she was doing, it's just like when the post stopped, like I felt it personally somehow. I know that that's not fair to say that to, the people who truly like grieved her death. But anyways, it was just a hard one. So her name's Sarah Papenheim, and I'm going to talk about her murder.
You sing it all.
Her murder.
Draw chalk around the body and toss that blood because DNA doesn't exist. That was a bad old-timey voice.
Mortar. So my sources are BBC News, an article by Paul Walsh for the Star Tribune.
I thought you were going to say Paul Wall.
Paul Wall. An article by Janine Peters for the NL Times, and an article by Amy Forliti and Mike Corder for the Twin Cities Pioneer Press. So I may ruin something for you, just like we were saying at the beginning.
Oh.
Usually Caitlin is the one who ruins things, but it's my turn to ruin studying abroad.
Okay.
Gonna ruin that.
Ruin away.
Okay. So Sarah Papenheim was from Minnesota, and it looks like she lived in California for a little bit of time in Redding. I'm not sure if that was for undergrad or what, but I had a hard time figuring out why. But she lived mostly in Minnesota and then spent a little time in California. But she had one brother and 2 loving parents, and life was honestly just pretty good for Sarah. Like, she had a good upbringing. They had enough money to do the things they wanted to do. She traveled a lot. Based on her mom, what I read about her mom, I think her mom was Nordic maybe, but they're an American family. So she was an avid drummer in the local Minneapolis scene, and she loved playing the blues and different kinds of music. She loved traveling, which she did have a chance to do as a talented drummer. She traveled around playing in different bands. She played a trap set, like the whole drum set. Sarah had a huge, bright smile, and she loved going to parties with her friends. She was like a socialite. So on her Instagram, you can see her laughing and being silly in like all of her Instagram pictures at parties, drumming, big smile, just like effervescent kind of person. In December 2015, something so exciting happened to Sarah. She decided to, at 18-year-old, study in the Netherlands. While in the Netherlands...
You're going to ruin the Netherlands?
Yeah. Well, I'm ruining a dude in the Netherlands, I guess. So while in the Netherlands, she met and quickly fell in love with a handsome young man named Nico Kersenmeijer. That might be wrong. He was, I believe he was Dutch. So they loved enjoying white wine together and traveling as a pair when she moved over. She just moved over there and started going to university there. They went to Paris. They went to Disneyland Paris. They went to Amsterdam. They went to Italy. Like, you can see all this on her Instagram page. Until something tragic happened that Sarah would find great challenge in grappling with. Her brother Josh died by suicide on February 10th of 2016.
Oh, no.
To say Sarah was heartbroken would be an understatement. 3 days after he died, she was in the Netherlands. She said, quote, "He never told me about his depression because he was always so quiet, but I always knew." She would post about how much she loved him. She would post pictures of him. She would post about how mad she was at him for leaving her, how life couldn't be the same. Like, her Instagram was almost like her diary. Yeah. Like, she just let it all out there. She decided to memorialize him with a tattoo on her rib cage that read, quote, "To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure." So after the funeral, because Sarah went back to the funeral and then back to the Netherlands, she returned to Rodenheim, Netherlands, which is where she was living. She and Nico continued their trend of traveling around Europe. And in August of 2016, Sarah actually decided to move to the Netherlands more permanently. She got into a program. It was a 3-year program for psychology, and she wanted to now study like mental health, suicidal depression, things like that because of her brother's death. That really inspired her. And she was studying psychology anyway, but she's like, okay, this is my focus for sure. And she was set to graduate in 2020. So just this past month. In Rotterdam. Oh, is it Rotterdam or Rotterheim?
It's Hillary Rodham Clinton. I have no idea.
In the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, regardless. Sarah also explored the local music scene because she was an avid drummer. So while doing so, she made a huge social circle of friends. And one of these was double bass player Joel Schelling, which is funny because the double bass is what my husband plays. And I'll get into it later, but like there's a picture of like his double bass case. And I'm like, oh, we have one very similar to that. But okay, so his name's Joel Schelling. Some articles said his name was Joe. Pretty sure it's Joel, but anyway, for what it's worth. So he was a couple years older than her, and Joel was very different than Sarah. He was shy, quiet, reserved, didn't have friends, but he did play the double bass, which is it looks like a big cello. It's an upright bass with strings. It's in a lot of like jazz and blues kind of stuff. So they got along so well, however, that they decided to be roommates because she wasn't ready to move in with her boyfriend yet. And they were all in student housing, but she did need somebody to like share. It wasn't a quad, but something like that. So they got an apartment together at a student complex called Kirkland Kralingen. And that's where her boyfriend Nico also had an apartment just like down the hall, I think, or within that complex. Things were fine. They lived together for a year and a half, and Sarah started mentioning to friends and family, though, that Joel was increasingly acting odd. So she called a friend back home named Adam, and she told Adam that Joel had insane mood swings and would get super mad, and that the longer she had been living with him, the more extreme he was escalating. Her friends, and especially her mom, who she like talked to all the time, were like, hey, if it's bad enough that you're telling us this, like you should probably not be living with him if you're talking about his escalating anger. They're like, why don't you move in with Nico? This guy you've been dating a really long time now. They've been together for a couple years at this point. And Sarah was like, no. Joel's like one of my best friends. He would never, ever like lash out at me. I'm literally his only friend. Like there's no way. He would be so depressed and all of those things. But then she called another friend back in the States and she told him that Joel told her that he was, quote, going to kill 3 people. So it just like got really a hot mess right away. She then told him that she had decided to let the police know because she was like, okay, now I'm actually afraid. And so because Nico just lived a few doors down, she did decide to stay with him for a few days. So it was December in where they lived in the Netherlands. And at this time, conveniently amidst the chaos with her roommate, Sarah was scheduling a flight to go home in just a couple weeks for Christmas. So it was like the beginning of December. So she was like excited to go home and visit her family and stuff. And she was particularly excited because she'd also booked a few gigs like with her drum set, like to be in bands and stuff. So she was like, sweet, I got to go play drums. So Sarah went back to her apartment the evening of December 12th to grab some clothing. Since she had been staying with Nico, she's like, I'm going to grab some more stuff. But that night, fairly late, neighbors heard what they would later say was commotion. They heard shouting and arguing coming from their apartment, and so the police were called. Now, one report says that, which this was Janine Peters from the NL Times reported this, said that the roommate called his mom and said he killed Sarah and that she called the police and told them. That was the only person who reported that I could find, so I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah.
Either way, the police were called. So the police arrived around midnight to find Sarah alone in the apartment. Sarah was alive. She was bleeding heavily, but she was alive. She had 27 stab wounds.
Holy fuck.
And 10 knife slashes, like throwing the arm at someone, like slashing. So it was
what the fuck?
Violent. Despite their efforts to resuscitate her and save her, she died in the apartment, right after the police arrived.
Jesus Christ.
Joel was immediately a suspect because he was the roommate and because the call, essentially. Anyways, they found him almost immediately. He was at a train station with his double bass trying to flee. The police shouted at him to get on his knees when they found him at the train station. Apparently, he was going home, to flee and go to his parents' house. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not going to flee there. They're going to find you. That's the place, of course, you would go.
Never go to where people know you.
I know.
No, actually do so we can catch your motherfucking ass.
Go there. That's the best place. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge.
Yeah. So they were like, get on your knees. And they had him via gunpoint. And he complied, but with an eerie, expressionless, emotionless look on his face, according to passerbys. They searched him and his double bass before arresting him. It took months, as it always does, but the trial began for Joel, finally. Joel surprisingly actually confessed right away. I'm always surprised by this. He told the police everything, except he said he actually couldn't remember most of that day. So he described what is essentially a blackout. He said he remembered having a knife, and then he remembered seeing her bloody in the room, and he connected the dots and knew he had to have done it, which I'll get more into this. So they evaluated his mental health, believing that he had psychological problems. They also tested the DNA found on Joel that didn't belong to him because there was blood and they didn't say specifically, just DNA. And then they also tested DNA found on Sarah and the murder weapon, the knife, which Joel had left in the apartment. And all the DNA matched what you would think. He had some of Sarah's DNA on her. Sarah had his DNA. The knife had Joel's DNA and Sarah's blood. The psychologist tests showed that Joel had untreated schizophrenia, psychosis, and autism that he wasn't aware of.
Oh, wow.
So as far as I could tell, Sarah's mom went all the way to the Netherlands to be at sentencing. I don't know if she was there for the entire trial. It sounds like she was, but I'm not sure.
So I can't even imagine what her parents.
Oh, I know, because they had just lost a child.
But now they've
lost
kids.
another. Now they have no children and they were both adult children. The brother was older than Sarah was. So the judge sentenced Joel Schelling to 6 years in prison. However, it was followed by an indefinite detention in a psychiatric center.
Okay, I was about to throw a fit.
But I'll get in this in just a second.
I get to throw my fit still?
You can throw a baby fit. So he was charged for manslaughter because the suspect, quote, could not be fully blamed. I'm assuming that was in regards to the psychosis, schizophrenia, and autism, of which they did not say what level that was, but the three combined, I think, is what they're referring to. Sarah's mom said, quote, I'm disgusted with the 6-year sentence, and, quote, all she did was try to be his friend. I mean, that's true from what I can tell. The court released a statement essentially saying that he was likely to be violent again. Like, the court was like, we think he will be violent again, so we do need to put him away. Based on his serious psychological disorders and that he needed prolonged treatment and guidance in a clinical setting, which is what they said, like, we do need to put this guy somewhere. So once in the center, so he has to serve the 6 years in prison. Mm-hmm. Then he'll go to a psych center. Once in the center, he'll be assessed every 2 years to see if it's safe for him to be in the public. Every 2 years, they'll make the decision. If it's a no, he has a mandatory 2 years. And that'll just happen indefinitely. Which I get. We do understand that in Nordic, this isn't Nordic, but we do understand in Nordic countries anyway that they're very, very big on rehabilitation. I don't know that much about the Netherlands because we haven't done cases there really. I'm interested to see if they're more about rehabilitate because some countries sway that way.
Well, it's hard because this isn't a mentally sane person. It's a different type. When you say rehab, well, when someone has schizophrenia and psychosis, when they have one of those things,
yeah,
I'm not saying they can't be rehabilitated, but you have to then are you going to make sure he's on meds forever?
Yeah,
who's gonna there's just so much.
Does he have a caseworker that he has to meet up with?
And it sucks because he does clearly need help.
Yeah.
If he truly has schizophrenia and psychosis and autism,
that's what they said. But,
he can't. I agree to an extent that he can't be blamed.
But also he's a danger to society.
Oh, 100% a danger to society. Yeah, but it's how... But then I always wonder too, how did he not get help before? There's just so much... I have so many questions.
Because he was a bit older and she was I think she was 20... She was 21, so I think he was 24, 25.
No one...
Yeah.
Well, that is the age.
Oh, yeah.
Typically
where you
that
get
schizophrenia shows. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard because he needs help, but also he killed someone.
Very brutally.
Yeah.
So obviously Sarah's family is devastated because first they lost Josh, the brother, and then Sarah. Their mom actually started a Facebook page called You Matter, period. It has a period at the end. And it's all about awareness around mental health, suicide, depression, and things like that. And she still posts weekly. It's her page. I went and looked at it and she's posted a You Matter thing. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. But that was pretty short. But when I read that and saw her Instagram and all this stuff about her, I was like, that's horrifying. She really did just try to be someone's friend. Mm-hmm. And he murdered her for seemingly no reason, perhaps jealous that she was going to stay with her boyfriend or something. Because she was a very beautiful, outgoing young lady who had everything going for her.
Yeah. And he needed help that he very clearly was not getting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just a tragic case. And my heart feels so sad for her parents and her friends. And it's just, it's so sad, yeah. Caitlin.
Both of the cases today, I just can't, I don't know. Sometimes I have a hard time, recovering, for lack of a better term, from certain cases and certain episodes. Yeah. And both of these cases are ones that are, hard to bounce back from and,
yeah.
Yeah. And mental health isn't, or mental illness, I shouldn't say, not mental health. Mental illnesses aren't something I know a lot about. Yeah. I mean, I don't have I have anxiety, which
sure.
It's not classified as is it? Is that classified? I don't think it is.
A mental illness? No, I think it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Actually,
because that's not a healthy mental capacity. That's an unhealthy mental state. Anxiety.
Yeah. Shit's hard, man.
Shit's hard, man. No, it's true. But We hope you guys are doing okay out there.
Do you have a joke to cheer our people up?